The sound of shattering crystal cut through the elegant restaurant like a gunshot, followed by the kind of silence that makes your heart stop beating. Sarah Martinez watched in horror as the fragments of what had once been a $300 Waterford wine glass scattered across the marble floor of Le Bernardin, each piece catching the chandelier light like tiny accusations. Her hands trembled as she stared at the destruction, knowing that this single moment had just cost her more than she made in a week. At 23, Sarah had already learned that life had a cruel sense of timing. Working double shifts at Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant wasn't her dream job, it was her lifeline. Every tip, every dollar went toward her mother's mounting medical bills, the stack of which sat on her kitchen table like a paper mountain of impossibility. Lupus didn't care that Sarah was already working 70 hours a week, didn't care that she hadn't bought herself new shoes in 2 years, didn't care that she sometimes chose between eating lunch and taking the subway home. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible as she knelt among the glass shards, her hands shaking so violently she couldn't even begin to clean up the mess. The restaurant's other patrons had stopped their conversations, their eyes boring into her like spotlights. She could feel the judgment, the irritation, the assumption that she was just another clumsy girl who didn't belong in their world. From across the room, she heard the unmistakable sound of her manager's heavy footsteps approaching. Mr. Dubois had already written her up twice this month, once for arriving 3 minutes late when the subway broke down, and once for forgetting to mention the daily special to a table of food critics. This would be strike 3. In New York's restaurant industry, 3 strikes meant you were not just out, you were blacklisted. Martinez. Mr. Dubois's voice boomed across the dining room, causing several diners to look up from their plates. "What the hell have you done now?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she tried frantically to gather the larger pieces of glass, cutting her finger in the process. A drop of blood landed on the pristine marble, adding insult to injury. This was it. She was about to lose the only job that paid enough to keep her mother's medications coming, to keep their tiny apartment, to keep hope alive. But before Mr. Dubois could reach her, another voice cut through the tension, a calm, measured, and surprisingly gentle. "Don't cry. Come here." Sarah looked up through her tears to see a man in his 60s extending his hand toward her. He was impeccably dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than her rent, with silver hair and kind eyes behind expensive glasses. She recognized him vaguely. He came in once a month, always sat at table 12, always ordered the same thing, and always left quietly. She had served him before, but they had never exchanged more than pleasantries about the weather or the wine list. "Sir, I'm so sorry about your glass," she stammered, trying to stand while avoiding the scattered crystal. "I'll pay for it, I promise. I know it was expensive, and yeah, that's quite enough of that," he said softly, his voice carrying an authority that somehow made the entire restaurant fall silent. He wasn't speaking loudly, but something about his presence commanded attention. "Accidents happen. That's why they're called accidents." Mr. Dubois had reached them now, his face red with embarrassment and anger. "Mr. Harrison, I am so incredibly sorry about this incident. This employee will be terminated immediately, and of course, we'll comp your entire meal and you'll do no such thing." The man, Mr. Harrison, who interrupted, still keeping his voice level but with an edge that made the manager take a step back. "The young lady was serving my table with grace and professionalism when a simple accident occurred. These things happen in restaurants. That's what insurance is for." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. She had broken his glass, ruined his evening, caused a scene in front of the entire restaurant, and he was defending her. Mr. Harrison turned back to Sarah, ignoring the flustered manager entirely. "What's your name?" "Sarah," she whispered, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Sarah Martinez." "Well, Sarah Martinez, would you mind bringing me another glass of wine when you have a moment? The 2015 Burgundy was excellent. He smiled at her then, and it wasn't the polite smile of a customer trying to smooth over an awkward situation. It was genuine, warm, and somehow made her feel like a person instead of just a uniform with a name tag. As Sarah hurried to fulfill his request, her hands still shaking but her heart somehow lighter, she caught fragments of conversation from Mr. Harrison's table. He wasn't alone here, he was dining with two other men in expensive suits, and she overheard enough to understand they were discussing some kind of business deal involving millions of dollars. Real estate, acquisitions, something far beyond her world of wine lists and table numbers. When she returned with his wine, carefully carrying it with both hands, Mr. Harrison looked up at her with those same kind eyes. "Tell me, Sarah, how long have you been working here?" "2 years, sir," she replied, setting the glass down with exaggerated care. "And what are you studying?" "You have the look of someone with bigger dreams than waiting tables." The question caught her off guard. Most customers didn't see her as anything beyond a server, certainly not someone with dreams and aspirations. "I was studying nursing, sir, but I had to drop out when my mother got sick." "The medical bills." She trailed off, realizing she was sharing too much with a stranger. Mr. Harrison nodded thoughtfully, swirling the wine in his glass. "Nursing is noble work. The world needs more people willing to dedicate their lives to caring for others." "I hope to go back someday," Sarah said quietly, "when things stabilize." "I hope you do too," he replied, and something in his voice made her believe he meant it. The rest of the evening passed without incident. Mr. Harrison and his companions finished their dinner, and as they prepared to leave, he approached the hostess station where Sarah was organizing menus. "Sarah," he said, pulling out a business card and a check from his jacket pocket, "I'd like you to have these." She looked at the business card first. Harrison Industries, Real Estate Development with his name, Robert Harrison, CEO, printed beneath. The check made her gasp audibly. It was made out to her for $50,000. "Sir, I can't accept this," she said, her voice shaking again, but this time from shock rather than fear. "This is too much." The glass couldn't have cost more than a few $100s. Mr. Harrison smiled that same warm smile. "This isn't about the glass, Sarah. This is about second chances. Everyone deserves them, but not everyone gets them. I'd like to change that for you." Tears began flowing down her cheeks again, but these were different tears of disbelief, of overwhelming gratitude, of hope she hadn't felt in years. "There are conditions," he continued gently. "You use this money to finish your nursing degree. Every penny of it goes toward your education and your mother's medical expenses. When you graduate, you work for 2 years at the free clinic my foundation runs in Brooklyn. After that, you're free to go wherever your career takes you. Deal?" Sarah couldn't speak. She nodded frantically, clutching the check like it might disappear if she let go. "Why?" she finally managed to whisper. "Why are you doing this for me?" Mr. Harrison was quiet for a moment, looking past her toward the restaurant's windows that faced the busy street beyond. 40 years ago, I was a kid from Queens working construction to pay for business school. One day, I accidentally broke an expensive tool that belonged to my foreman. I was ready to get fired, just like you were tonight. But instead of yelling at me, he said something I'll never forget. "Son, how you handle your mistakes matters less than how you handle other people's mistakes." He didn't fire me. He promoted me to crew leader 6 months later. He turned back to Sarah, his eyes bright with memory. "That man's kindness changed the trajectory of my entire life. I built my company on the principle that everyone deserves a second chance, that accidents don't define character, and that sometimes the most important investment you can make is in another human being." As Sarah watched him walk out into the New York night, she realized that sometimes guardian angels don't have wings, or sometimes they just have kind eyes and the wisdom to know that a single moment of grace can change everything. 3 years later, Sarah Martinez graduated summa cum laude from nursing school. She kept her promise, working at the Harrison Foundation Clinic where she discovered her passion for pediatric care. But more than that, she discovered the power of paying kindness forward. Every patient she treated, every family she comforted, every moment she chose compassion over judgment was her way of honoring the gift she'd been given. And on quiet nights, when she tucked her healthy mother into bed in their comfortable apartment, Sarah would think about that terrible, wonderful evening when a shattered glass became the first piece of a new life, a life built not on what was broken, but on what was possible when one human being chooses to see the best in another.